Hello everyone, welcome to a new chapter Importance of Control of Open File. Today we'll take a look in the game Weingold Alexander against the Grandmaster Ivanishevich Ivan. Weingold had the white pieces in this position. As you can see here, we have very complex stuff on the board, like a lot of pieces, but what we can say here immediately is this: we have very passive rooks on A8 and B8 and the knight on A6, who is kind of like out of the play. Now it's a very important is how white will, let's say, continue to play this position for advantage. Of course, we also need to say that this queen on E5 is in a very nice central square, so now white needs to find the right way how to play this for advantage. So first of all, please stop the video here and try to find the best move for white, how to continue this position to play for advantage. Thank you so much for your time. Here, the best possible move to start is to play a move queen to c3. White is saying, okay, your queen on e5 is the most dangerous piece on the board, so I want to destroy it. Main reason is because without the queens on the board, black defenses were kind of like a very weak. Especially when I say that, I mean that pawn on d6 will be, let's say, not defended in the right way when the queens are not on the board. So after the move, for example, if black takes queen c3, after the bc, this d6 pawn is kind of like in a bad spot, so there is nothing else to do for black except to take bishop e5. But after the cb, knight c7, white can simply play first h4, kicking the knight from the square g5, and after knight to h7, knight to c4, just a beautiful square for the knight on the c4, attacking the d6 pawn. Yes, black can play knight e8, but we can see that after the move e5, white is playing for, let's say, very nice advantage, and I will say white has a very nice position. So here, black in this position decided not to trade the queens, but to continue with the move queen to e7. But white is saying here, no, I still want to trade the queens, and here white played the move queen to f6. Key moment. Why queen f6? Again, white is saying, without the queens on the board, I will pressure the d6 pawn on the best possible way. So after the queen f6, now again, black can't run anymore, so black took queen to f6, and after rook f6, there is no other way how black can defend the d pawn, so black took bishop to b5. The problem is that after c to b, the square c4 is suddenly open and the white knight can jump there. So after the cb, black played the move knight e7, and now white had a chance to improve his position even more. So there are like two different ways how white can play this position for advantage. One way is just to play rook bf1, just to put the pressure on the, let's kind of like almost open the open f file, and the other way was actually to take the pawn on d6 with the move rook to d6. But the problem was, I think that white was not sure what will happen after the move knight to e8 and after the move rook d7, knight f6. Suddenly black knights are jumping around, but after rook e7, maybe rook e8 for black, if I need to guess. Idea is that if white takes the b pawn, the e pawn will go down. So the point is this kind of the position, but after bishop f1, I will say here again that white must have, let's say, a very nice advantage, especially because these two pawns are very strong, and let's say the knight on g5 can defend against both of these pawns. But let's go back here. White, instead to take a risk with rook d6, white decided here to play a move rook to b to f1, trying to put more pressure on the f file. Now, here black decided to play a move knight to e8, trying to, in the same time, to defend the d and to attack the f rook, So nothing else to do here except to go back with the rook. And here now, idea of white is definitely to play a move h4 to kick the knight and to take the f pawn. As we can see here, still these two rooks are not doing anything on the a8 and b8, so white needs to try to improve or try to open position as much as possible, as these rooks of black are not doing anything. So here black played the move f6, saying, okay, I want to release this knight, And after this, but the problem is that suddenly this diagonal is kind of the open when the pawn from f7 is on f6. So white was pretty happy, I think, to play a move bishop to g4. Now, I will say that still black position is in a serious problem, but the white doesn't have a clear target. So we can say this is the weakness that I wanna take. So here after the bishop g4, black is still playing kind of like pretty good to defend. So rook to d8, h4, knight to f7, going back. After knight f7, suddenly bishop has enough space to play bishop to e6. And after the king g7, this is my second, let's say, second critical, in my opinion, second critical position in this endgame. So please stop the video here and try to find a way how white should play this position for a win. Thank you so much for your time. In this position, after the move king g7, is it essential to take the knight on f7? Not the easy move to give the bishop for the knight, but the right one. Why bishop f7 is so important? First of all, this knight from f7 idea is to go to e5. So here, white must fight against this. So here, white took the bishop to f7. Yes, we gave up a bishop, but we destroyed a very important defensive knight of black. So after the bishop f7, black played king f7, and so finally, our knight from d2 is going to the c4 square. Now this knight is pretty good, attacking the d6 pawn and preparing to go to some other square that you will see soon enough. So after the move knight e4, black played the move king g7, knight goes to e3, a little bit shuffling the knight, preparing a very nice idea. White play first rook to d7. Plan of black is to play rook e7 or rook to f7, trying to defend this f pawn, but now suddenly knight to g4, attacking 3 times the f6 pawn. Nothing else for black to do except to defend rook f7. And if I can say here, third critical moment in this endgame. So here, how white is playing this position for a win. Or let's say, what's the motive for white to play this position for a win? Thank you so much for your time. In this position, again, very interesting idea, pawn to h5. White idea here is to even to sacrifice a pawn, but for that one pawn, white will get the full control over the f5 square, because here nothing else for black to do except to take h5. Knight e3, very nice idea. Now white sacrificed the h pawn, but in return, the knight can jump on the f5 square. Black played a6. Again, black is trying to get some kind of a counterplay on the queen side, but here, very important move, b6. With the move b6, white is saying, no, I will not open the queen side. And with the b6, again, white is taking the c7 square from the black pieces. So after the b6, black tried to play a5. Idea was with the a5 to try to activate the rook with the moves rook a6 and rook to b6. But now white said, okay, rook f5, rook a6, knight e4. Obviously, white with the idea of rook f5, white wants to grab the h5 pawn. Rook e7, rook f4, and now I like to use the word now with a little bit of dancing, but we can see that black pieces are in the very, very passive squares, especially the knight, defending like the pawns on d6 and f6, but there is no future for the knight. As we can see here, there is no good square for the knight to jump. Also, the rook on a6 is just not doing still nothing, because this knight on c4 is pretty good in defending the b and at the same time attacking the d6 pawn. So king g6, finally, when you don't know how to improve the endgame, there is always king there, king f2, a4, king e3, and now black tried very interesting plan. That move is rook to e5. Black said, I don't want to defend this position passively anymore. Black idea here is that if white takes the rook, black wants to take it with a d pawn, and now if white goes with rook h4, black plan is to at least to take the one pawn, because the knight is not there anymore to defend that, and after rook f h5, but still black wants to give a check and take the pawn. Still here, white must be winning, because rook h6 and rook h7 is happening pretty fast. But here, this was one of the last chances for black, at least to activate the rook. But here, White saw that. White calculated this position, but White said, no, I'm not interested to take your rook. I like my knight here. And White played king to f3, saying, I want to wait and I don't want to rush. So Black moved the rook, repetition. Again, I suppose they repeated the moves because move 40 is clearly near. And after the king to d3, rook e7, rook f3, one step back, h4, rook f4. As we can see again, the black position is kind of like in the Zugzwang. This rook can't go anywhere, as well the knight and the rook. King is in the best possible square, so now what black can only do is to push the pawns forward. So king g5 check, rook f5 check here, rook f4, little repetition. And finally, after a couple of moves, White took the h4 pawn, saying now my next target is a black h5 pawn. Black played knight g7, and after the rook f3 here, Black tried to give his best to make some kind of a counterplay, and here Black played the move f5. It's very hard for Black to make any kind of a counterplay because still the rook on a6 is too far away from the fight. And now I will say that White will punish this kind of a counterplay. Try, let's say, for Black to make a counterplay through the open files. So after the move f5, rook to h to f4, saying you must take it because if you're not, I will take your f pawn. So here Black took rook e4, and now after the move rook e4, fe, king e. Again, knight is controlling the b pawn, but also is attacking a d pawn on d6. Nothing else for Black here than to play back, so knight to e8, and now check. Let's use these open files to get even better squares for the white pieces. So check, king f7, and finally king is entering. So king to f5, rook a8, king g5, rook to d8, check. Again, always this is very important to be careful. The problem is that if White takes king h5 in this type of the endgame, Black will play knight f6 check. And now there is no good check for there is no good place for the king, because if White king goes to g5, this knight will go to e4, double check, and rook is going down. If White king decides to go king h4 again, rook h8 check, king g5, knight e4, double check, and again rook is going down. So very strange situation, but White said, nope, I'm not taking the poison pawn, rook f3, king g7, rook to e3, again using the open files to put the rook on the square e7. This position is completely winning, but I just want to show you how just pieces were, let's say, naturally activated, how it's very hard for Black to defend this type of position against the white domination. So after the rook e3, Black played king f7, rook e6. Now, why rook e6? White idea here is also to take away the f6 square from the knight. Try rook d7, and now knight to e3. There is no reason for this knight to defend the b pawn anymore. This knight is going to f5. So knight g7, rook g6, h4, knight g4. As we can see, when you have the active king in this type of the endgames, you can also play for a checkmate. So knight e8, check, king f8, check, king e7, and now king to g6. Few more moves, and you can see the black pieces are stuck. There were not like no good squares for the black pieces. So rook d8, check, king d7, king f7, c4, and now my question, let's say the fourth question here is like, please stop the video and try to find the best way for White to play this position for a win. Thank you so much. Here, the crucial move is to jump knight to g7. Why? The point is that Black can't get away from the trade of the knights, but the problem is not the trade of the knights, but after knight g7, White will simply take, and after king g7, White king is on time just to come closer and to get all of these pawns of Black in this pawn endgame. Thank you so much. This was a bit longer example, but because White had such a dominant position, let's say a long time, and White didn't want to take any, let's say, risk. So let's go for a quick recap as we usually do. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you saw like how you need to use the open files to get your win in this kind of the endgames. But definitely, if you're saying the first move is a queen c3, so all of this was possible because queens were not on the board, and black had a problem how to defend this crucial pawn. So queen c3, queen f7, second important moment to trade the queens. And after the queen f6, rook to f6, bishop bcb, we can see that open f file is a crucial thing, as well as the square c4 for the knight. So after here, black played the move knight c7, rook to b8 to f1, controlling the f file, knight e8, rook f2. So I will go a little bit closer to the critical moments. Sorry, not closer. I will go a little bit faster to go through the critical moments in this game. So after the f6, bishop g4, I will say, in my opinion, second important moment in this game is the move after bishop e6, king g7 is definitely the move, bishop to f7, destroying the knight that can potentially jump on the square e5. So after bishop f7, king f7, white now played the move knight to c4, controlling the whole position. And from here, the third important moment is definitely the plan with the move h5, saying I want to destroy your g-pawn to get this full control over the f5 square. Knight e3, a6, again, I will say new important moment is not to take the a6, because if we take the pawn, this rook will have a huge meaning in the position. So here, first we just close it up, b6, not giving this rook from a8 to work. And after the a5, now this was a bit dancing from here. And I will say, again, a critical and very interesting idea was that after the move rook e5, when you see the free material, don't take it immediately. Just stop there and always take, let's say, a minute or two to think, okay, do I want to take this rook or not? What's the what are the consequences? What are the positive things? So maybe here, white was even winning with knight e5, but white said, no, I want to still to have a full control over the position before I make any risky move. And here white played first move queen f3 without doing anything concrete. Again, we had a little bit dancing. And suddenly, when white took the second h pawn here, the position was completely over for black. The main reason is that black here tried to open up position, but it's very hard to defend when the one of the main rooks is just not close to the black king. So here, black tried to make some mess with f5, but after rook h4, from here, just the full control over the f file, in the g file, and in a couple of moves, the game was ended. I will just be closer to, again, I will just want to say it one thing, that in this type of the endgames, don't take material pretty quickly, because here king h5 was again losing because knight f6, and suddenly there is no good square for the white king. White didn't take it, and after a couple of moves of activation, first of the rook, later also the knight, here after the king g6, black couldn't do anything after the move knight g7 because the every pawn endgame is easily lost for black. Thank you so much. This was a bit longer game, but I wanted to show you how you need to dominate the position all the time, especially when you have a huge strategical advantage. You need to play, I will use the word slow. So you need to be, you need to improve your position with every and each move. And every time when you're getting, let's say, where you're taking a huge material, let's say always take a minute, take or maybe even two, try to see if there are any counterplay of your opponent before you make some concrete stuff. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this little, let's say, a little bit longer example, and hope to see you in the next one. Take care and bye. Hello everyone, welcome to Chapter 7, Importance of Control of Open Files. Today we'll take a look in the game between Sakhaev Konstantin and Garry Kasparov. Kasparov had the black pieces in this game, and let's go for the game. In this position here, black is on the move, or we can say Kasparov is on the move here. So very important first moment in the game, and now it's a key thing how black is playing this very complicated position for advantage. So please stop the video here and try to find the best move for black. Thank you so much. I hope you find the right move. Let's say, very complicated position here. What we can see from the start is that these pawns on h3 and g4 are very, let's say, far away, weakening the king onto g1. But here also, white has a bishop pair, and I will say for now, this king protection on g1 is pretty good. But instead, to keep the queens on the board, Kasparov decided to play a very interesting idea, and that's a move knight to c5, jumping with the knight in this, let's say, on the queen side. Idea is very simple. Yes, the queen on d8 is under attack of the d1 rook, but also black wants to take the b3 queen. Here, nothing else to do except to take the queens, because suddenly after the move knight c5, black is completely unpinned the queen, and if white doesn't take the queen, here black will go to h4 looking for some, let's say, of these pawns on the king side. So here, nothing else for white to do except to trade. So rook to d8, knight to b3, and after the move rook a8, again, it's important to say what kind of a trade will black choose here to do. Here, black said, no, I want to keep the knight here a little bit longer. I don't want to trade also the pair of rooks. And here, black took the rook on a8. The reason is, if this knight a1 happened, after the rook f8 and king f8, the position is probably around the equal, but completely, let's say, still unclear. But very nice decision by Kasparov here. He took rook to a8, saying this knight will be here in the same time attacking the bishop and attacking the rook on a1. White here played the only move, that's a move rook to b1. And again, when you have the open file, always try to put the rook there. So black here played the move rook to d8, taking control over the open d file. After the move rook d8, white played bishop d1, saying, okay, make a choice with this knight with this knight on b3. This knight can stay here. So this is the second important moment. So please here stop the video and try to find the best move for this knight on b3. Thank you so much. I hope you find the right move. Now it's a time for black to make a trade. That trade is a move knight to c1. Why? Without the bishop on c1 here, there is a, let's say, room for this rook to get to the second rank. And as you know, if you have the open file and you have the rook, it's always good to put the rook on the second or in the seventh rank. So after the move bishop d1, beautiful move here is to take knight to c1, and after the move rook to c1, even before black put the rook on d2, black decided first to activate the knight. So here black played the move knight to e5, jumping. The main thing is now that black is preparing this jump to the, let's say, squares to d3 or c4, but also black has in the pocket this idea with the rook to d2. Here, this was, let's say, the last chance for white to at least to try to keep fighting, and the only plan here for white was to play a move bishop to c2. Why? This was the only idea, because now after some moves like rook to d2, white has this idea with knight e4 kicking the rook from the d2. But here, white first played the move bishop to b3, and now it's a completely different story. Now, after the move rook to d2, white can't play the move knight e4 because the b2 pawn is hanging. But after the move rook to c2, I will ask you again to stop the video here and try to find the best way for black here to keep this endgame to play for a win. Thank you so much. I hope you find the right move. After the move rook c2, critical move for black is to take the knight, defender, bishop to c3. Obviously, after the move bishop c3, white can take this bishop with the rook, because white plan is to get to b2 pawn. So nothing else here for white to do except to take it with the bc3. What do we have here? We have a knight against the bishop, but what's even better for black is that black has a very nice pawn structure on the queen side. So black has 3 on 2, and also these two pawns of white are completely separated. So that's a pretty good news for black. Also, as I said, this rook on d file is just beautiful, and it's helping black to attack these weaknesses much more easier. So here, first one check, king f1, and now, well, let's say this is the case here. Whenever you have a chance to activate the king, please do it. Here, black played the move king to f8, saying, yes, my rook is on d2, but white can take it because black knight will take on d2 with a double check on the king and on the bishop. So after the move king f8, nothing else for white to do here except to go rook to c1. And why I like this endgame in generally, like why I like this example so much here, black is always, with every move of black is keep finding a new ideas how to put the pressure on the white position. And now very nice maneuver, but black played the move knight to g5. The plan with this knight g5 move is first of all obviously to attack the h pawn, but also I will say the more dangerous move for white is to jump knight e4 and to attack the f2 pawn and also the c3 pawn. So very nice maneuver with the knight. Black is keep trying to find a better square for his knight. So after the move knight g5, white played the move rook c2, trying at least to make a trade and to destroy this very dangerous rook, but black said, okay, I'm not playing with the rook again. Knight e4 jumping move. The problem is now for white is that white still can't take the rook because knight will take the rook with a double check. So after knight e4, king e1, nothing else to do. The problem here that bishop can't go anywhere because the bishop is defending the rook. Also, this white rook can't go anywhere as well because the black rook will just grab the f2 pawn. So here white decided to play move king to e1. But the problem here is that after king e1, white is losing the c pawn. So here, first black took rook c2, and after bishop c2, knight to c3. After the knight c3, white played king to d2, knight to d5. Again, whenever you are, let's say, when you are material up, it's very important to activate all of your pieces, and that's what black is doing. So after the knight to d5, white played bishop b3, activate the king. King is coming closer. So king e7, king d3, king d6. King d4, and now black said, okay, I want to jump with my knight, but I can't do it right now because the f pawn is under attack. So here, black first played the move f6. After the f6, white played h4. White is continuing putting the pawns on the dark squares because with these pawns on dark squares, this white bishop can't touch them. So h5, and then now we're getting to the second part of this endgame. How black is winning with the pawn up is, again, nice maneuver. We need to find a better square for this knight on d5, and that happens. So black played knight c7, and why knight c7? Idea is to go knight e6 and knight to c5 to attack the bishop and to put an additional pressure on the a4 pawn. So after knight c7, white played the move f4, check, king c4, knight c5, bishop c2, and here I would like you to stop the video here and try to find the way for black how to win this position in the most concrete way. Thank you so much. I hope you find the right move. Here, the critical move for black is to play beautiful move knight to a4. Why white resigned here? The thing is, if white takes the bishop just to b5, and the problem is that this endgame with bishop b5, cb, king b, let me show you, is completely lost because black can simply play king d5, and black is on time to grab all the white pawns on the king side. So just a beautiful win by Kasparov. I hope you enjoyed this game. Let's go for the quick recap. So I will say the first critical moment in this position is a definitely move knight c5. Black is changing the nature of the position. With the plan with knight c5, black is saying, I want to play the endgame, but in that endgame, let's say here, in that endgame, black will have full control over the d file. So after the knight c5, rook to d8, knight to b3, takes. It's very important for black is to keep that rook because without the rook, black will not have any control over the d file. After this, rook to b1, rook to d8, bishop d1. Again, the second important moment, black first needs to destroy the bishop on c1. Yes, that bishop looks a bit passive here, but without that bishop, the second rank of white is completely unprotected. So here, knight to c1, beautiful idea. And after rook c1, even before playing the move rook d2, black decided first to activate knight e5, bishop b3. Finally, now it's a time for the rook to get to d2. And after the rook d2, rook c2, I will say again, critical moment for black. bishop c3, saying now the knight will disappear, but after the bishop c3, white must destroy his pawn structure. So after the bc, check, king f1. Now we can see that black knight is doing so many things now, defending the rook on d2, but also now when you don't know what to do, keep improving with the king, and that's what happened here. Black played king f8, rook to c1, knight g5, new maneuver with the knight, going to e4, trying to attack the c3 and f2 pawn in the same time, rook c2, knight to e4, the knight is there. Unfortunately for white, white can't touch the d2 rook because knight will just simply take it. So king to e1, rook c2, bishop c2, and black is a pawn up, and now very nice plan now for black, activating the king. And now after the king d4, black said, let me first put the pawns on the dark squares so white bishop can't touch them. And after h5, again, nice maneuver, knight e7, trying to find a new weakness in the white position, that's a4 pawn, and just a beautiful win after the move knight a4, because white bishop can't touch the knight because of the plan with the b5. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this endgame. Just a beautiful win by Kasparov. Here you can see that after the move knight e5, black used his open file here, d file, together with this beautiful knight to attack all these pawn weaknesses on the queen side of white. And then after black took the pawn, very nice conversion of the advantage while activating the king and trying to find a second weakness in the white position. That weakness was a a4 pawn, and always a little bit tactic with knight a4, b5, and then just if white takes the knight, then black will win the pawn endgame pretty easily. Thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying this example. I hope you will use your open files in your games in the best possible way, and see you in the next game. Take care and bye. Hello everyone, welcome to chapter 7, Importance of Control of Open File. Today we'll take a look in the game between Liputian Simbat and Fressinet Laurent. Here, Fressinet had a black pieces. Let's take a look in the game. As we can see here, black is in the move, but here also black has a beautiful control over the f file, and also the queen is on b6, controlling this diagonal of a7, g1. As we can see here that white king can't move anywhere because it's already 3 times this rook is defended, 1, 2, 3 times, but also black pieces are attacking the rook on f2 also 3 times. So we can say that here white is a little bit in the Zugzwang. White can't do anything before black decides what will he do on the open f file. So here let's say the main job for black is how to improve this position even more. So first of all, please stop the video here and try to find the best move for black, how for black to keep improving this position. Thank you so much. I hope you find the right move. Black played a beautiful idea of king to f8. Black plan is simple. I want to still keep the control over the f file and prepare myself for the endgame. First of all, black wants to put he wants to play king e7, king d8, king t7, king b8, king a7, and from that side, black king wants to enter from this diagonal a7, d4, but let's go move for move. After the king f8, white played queen d2, waiting move. Black played king to e7, queen e2, king d8. Now everything is going according to black plan. Queen c2, and now, okay, we can't cross the c file, but we can play a move rook to f8, waiting a 1 move. Now here white repeated, and white played the move queen to e2. Now we can cross the c file, so black played king c7, and after the move king d2, king to b8, maneuver is ready. Queen to e2, king to a7, queen to c2. There is this kind of positions, for example, in my experience, I don't like the positions, for example, white, because here this is the most annoying thing to play with white, just waiting for the black to act. In my personal games, I want to be the side that's reacting and playing for a win. This passive play is kind of like very difficult. So after the move queen to c2, one waiting move rook f7, waiting for this queen to move from the c file. So white played move queen d2, and now queen c5, one step closer. With the move queen c5, now black has a full control not only from the f file, but also from the c file as well. White played queen c2, and now queen to d4, also full control. Black queens is just doing so tremendous job in the center of the board. Now finally white moved bishop to b5, but here black simply just improved the king. King to b6, bishop to d3, and finally here we can see that black put his pieces on the maximum squares. I like when I say maximum thing, I mean like there are no better squares for the black pieces than there are just these pieces are right now. So after the move bishop d3, now it's a time to get an action. Here first, black played the move rook to f2, trade. And after rook f2, queen f2. Here, please stop the video and tell me how do you improve this endgame from the black side and how do you play this endgame for the win. Thank you so much for your time. Here, the crucial move is king to c5. Now black king is from the square g8. Black king went through the, let's say, a long way to get to the c5, and then from here to help his queen on d4. So g4, but after the move g4, there is no, have to say, there is no problem for black. Black is just deciding to trade the queens, queen to f2, king to f2, and now king to d4. In the same time, attacking the bishop and attacking the e5 pawn. White played the move king e2, but now black found a new weakness on the white king side, and that new weakness are these two pawns on h3 and the g4. So here, black played bishop to g2. The problem is that if white goes with the h4, there is this beautiful move, bishop to f1, check from the back. The problem is that when white takes it, black will simply take the d3 bishop with the easily winning pawn endgame. Black king will just take all of these pawns. So let's go back. After this, white played bishop c4. At least white tried to take something for these two pawns, but after bishop h3, king f3, black is not defending this position passively. Here, after the move bishop e6, black will just simply take the e5 pawn with the idea to take the g pawn as well. So after the move bishop h3, white played king f3, and again, we need to get to the e6 pawn. So black played the move h5. Here, nothing else for white to do except to take the e6 pawn with the bishop, but after bishop e6, now black has a choice, and very, I will say, easy choice, just to transpose this position to the winning pawn endgame. Here, bishop to g4, bishop to g4, and after hg, obviously, if white king takes the g, black king will take the e pawn, and after king g5, black king will just go back to get both of these pawns on the queen side. Here, white tried to play move queen f4, king f4, little tricky move with the idea to try to push the e pawn forward, but black played king to d5, protecting first the e6 square, and in the next move the e5 pawn will go down. Beautiful win by Fressinet. I hope you enjoyed this example. Let's do a quick recap as we usually do. So in this position, it's very important to say that black has a complete control over the F file, also complete control over the C file in the later stage of the game. And these two files were absolutely crucial for black to play this position. It's not the endgame yet because queens are on the board, but to play this position on, let's say, on the win. So it's a very important not to rush in this type of positions. It's very important to find a way how you can improve. In this position, black just played the move king to f8, understanding that this endgame, this position will be that black will be easily winning in the endgame here, but only when the black king get the full activation. So after the move queen d2, king e7, queen e2, king d8, just a beautiful maneuver. And I will just go a little bit quickly, let's say dancing with the king. And after the queen to d2, queen c5, getting control over the c. Also here with the move queen d4, getting full control over the every possible diagonal and the square in this game. After bishop b6, king to b5, bishop d3, and now when time is come, just king is coming. So after the king c5, the problem for white is that white just couldn't do anything else than just to wait for black action. So after the g4, trade, and the king e5, just easily this e5 pawn is going down. And here white tried to defend the bishop, but after bishop g2 and bishop c4, h pawn here is going down. And I will say that h5, bishop e6. So here I will say the last important moment is just to grab this g pawn with the bishop, because if he takes with the pawn, that position after king f4 can easily be even lost for black. So it's very important to transpose this position to the winning pawn endgame. So after bishop g4 hg, and also what's very important this type of position is to be very careful until the very end, because after the move king f4, it's very important to play move king d5 to stop the e pawn, and after this white will resign. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this kind of like this position. The one advice from me is, like, when you have a winning position, when you have such an active position, always try to improve your pieces until the maximum. So don't rush. Even if you're not, let's say, if you don't have a material advantage, but you have, let's say, very nice positional advantage, try to keep improving and take material only, let's say, in the moment when you think that there is no counterplay from your opponent. Here, as you can see, black took all of his time to activate first the king, and then in the right time to trade the queens, because with the king, after the move king c5, king d4, king e4, just black king was kind of the critical piece in this endgame, and black won this endgame pretty easily. So definitely be careful, and I hope this chapter will help you to use the file and to use the file in the best possible way, of course, and to be patient in winning, let's say, this type of the positions. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this game, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care and bye. Hello everyone, welcome to Chapter 7, Importance of Control of Open File. Today we'll take a look in the game between Tikhon and Hans and Wojtaszek Radoslav. Wojtaszek had the black pieces in this game. Let's take a look in the position on the board. As we can see here, there is a huge fight over the e file, and also there is this beautiful e4 pawn on white. So here black needs to be careful, and black needs to find the right plan how to neutralize the center of white here. So please stop the video and try to find the best plan for black, how black is playing this position for advantage. Thank you so much for your time. Here, absolutely beautiful move for black is to start with bishop to f2. Why? Without the knight on f2, after the move fe4, now white knight can't take because he will not be there anymore. So the black plan is to neutralize the knight that can potentially defend the e4 pawn. Yes, that's a big trade because d4 bishop is a very strong piece, but without that knight, black will make a very nice trades over the e4 square. So let's take a look what happened. Bishop f2, rook takes f2. fe4, just a beautiful knight to e4. And of course, black kept trading, so knight e4, bishop e4, and after the bishop f5, last black piece that was completely undeveloped is entering the game. After the move bishop f5, now we can see that black is keep fighting for the e file, and there is nothing else for white to do except to trade the bishops. After bishop f5, gf, now we can see why this plan was so strong for black. Without the pawn on e4, now d5 pawn is becoming a main target for the black pieces. In this position, yes, there was also possible to take this bishop with the queen, but without the queens on the board, because white will probably just trade the queens, d5 pawn will not be such a, let's say, easy attacking square. So black here decided first to take g takes f to keep the queens, to keep both queens on the board, to actually, with the black queen, to attack this d5 pawn even easier. So after the move gf, white played the move queen d3 to trade, sorry, not to trade, let's say, to defend the pawn on d5. So this is a second important moment here. Please stop the video and tell me how will you play this position from the black side again. Thank you so much. Here again, black is keep fighting for the e file. The crucial move for black is to make a trade. rook to e1. The main reason for this trade is without the rook on e1, black is destroying the last piece that's actually controlling the e file from the white side. After the bishop e1, rook to e8. Now the problem for white is, okay, obviously this bishop on e1 is under attack, but white can't play a move like rook e2 because black will simply take, and now queen to d5 check. The d5 pawn will go down pretty easy. So after the move rook e1, nothing else for white to do except to move the bishop, and that bishop will go to c3. Again, white has a full control over the e-file. Let's use it to put the rook on a nice square, and black play the move rook to e4, saying, okay, after the rook e4, black also can attack the a4 pawn. After the rook e4, nothing else for white to do except to play a b3, keep defending the pawn, but now it's a time for black to keep aggressive. Let's say to keep playing this position aggressive, black needs to put all his pieces into game, and the one piece that's still back, that's a knight on f8. So here black played the move knight to d7, activating the knight. Bishop e2, king f8, little bit with the move king f8, plan for black is to at least to keep this king closer to the e file, but after the rook to d2, knight to f6. Now the plan with knight f6 is to keep pressure on the d5 pawn, but also to prepare some jumpings on the g4 square. Now white played the move king to f1. Why? Still the move rook e2 is not possible because black has such a nice pressure over the d5 pawn. So here white decided first to move king f1, let's say to at least to try to play rook e2 in the right moment. But after the king f1, black saw that, and here black played the move queen e7, saying, okay, you can try to play rook e2, but again, if white decides to play rook e2, there is a trade, and d5 pawn is going down. That's the main reason why after the move queen e7, white decided to take the knight. So bishop to f6, I will say very probably the best practical chance, because if white didn't take the knight, this knight will go to g4, and from the g4 square, e3 jump will be very, very dangerous. So nothing else to do after queen e7, bishop f6, queen to f6, and finally rook e2 is on the board. Now, after the rook e2, black is saying, I will not play the queen's endgame here. First, black played queen to a1 check. Nothing else for this king except to go closer, but now, very nice move, so please stop the clock here and try to find the next move of white in this kind of like the endgame. Thank you so much for your time. Here, the most important move is to play queen d4 check. Basically, the black plan here is to transpose this position to the better rook endgame, where the d5 pawn will become a huge weakness. After the move queen to d4, nothing else for white to do except to trade the queens, and after the rook d4, now d5 is a black main target. Rook e6, nice move, activating the rook to d5, and here this was the last, and I will say the best chance for white at least to try to keep this position slightly worse. Here white should just play a move a5. With this plan a5, at least these pawns will not be pushed pretty easy. Yes, black will still be like a pawn up, but this will not be so easy to win anymore. But here first, white played move rook h6, attacking the pawn, king g8, and now black idea here is again to play rook to d3 or rook d2 to keep attacking the b pawn. Again, white had this chance to push a5, but he didn't. White played the move king e2, and now it's a time for black to keep pushing b5. Let's go. Now we have a pawn armada 4 against 2 on the queen side, and black is not wasting any time. Let's push these pawns forward. AB, rook e6. White is trying at least to activate the rook, but now king to f7, attacking the rook, rook h6, king g7, and now rook to e6. I really like now the next move of black, rook to d4, saying with the move rook d4, black wants, of course, to play rook e4 to trade the rooks to get to the winning pawn endgame, but also the black plan is to go rook to b4, and with the rook to b4, black plan is just to grab the b pawn. So check, king to g6. Also, this is just a very nice play from black here with active rook on d4. Black needs also the active king. So Black plan is to keep aggression with the king. So king h5 and king to g4 is the next step of this game. After the rook b7, check, king d2, b4. Now, as you can see, this pawn chain is just beautiful, and white can't do anything about this because black can just simply play rook d4 with a plan to defend the d pawn. Rook to d7, check, king to e3, but now after the move h6, black is defending the last pawn or just moving the last pawn from the 7th rank, and now black is ready for the next step of entering inside of the king side of white. So rook e7 and now rook to d1. Very nice move from black, activating the rook, preparing rook e1, and from d1 square now the b3 pawn is even easier target. Here, rook e6 check, but of course, let's go forward with the king, king h5, king e2, rook to b1. Now, again, in this winning positions, especially black, sometimes black needs to give something, and that something is at this d6 pawn. But in return, black will grab the b pawn of white. Rook d6, rook to b3, rook d5. Yes, this is a double attack. Both of these black pawns are hanging, but the black king is entering. King to g4, takes, rook g3. Now both of these pawns on h4 and f4 are like a main target of the rook. Rook b5, b3, and after king f2, h5, rook b7, rook c3. White resigned because white can't, let's say, defend both of these pawns and also can't protect the b pawn from pushing forward. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed in this example. Let's go for a quick recap. Here, I will say definitely the most important move in this game is the move bishop to f2. With this trade of the bishop for the knight, now black can easily take on e4 in the right moment. So after bishop to f2, rook f2 and fe4, now everything goes pretty smoothly because after the knight e4, bishop e4, bishop f5 is a crucial move because without the bishop, now d5 pawn will be a very easy target. Bishop f5, I really like the fact that here black kept the queens on the board. He played the move gf. With a plan with the gf now, we can see that d5 pawn is becoming like a real weakness. Queen d3, and again, one of the things in this chapter what's so important is fighting for a file. Here, black plays just the beautiful move rook e1, and the main problem is for white is that after the bishop e1, rook e8, white can't keep fighting for the file because of white needs to defend the d pawn. So any rook e2 will just be like a trade, and queen d5, and black is pretty happy to get a free d pawn. So white played bishop c3, and again, activation of the rook. Let's use this e file to activate the rook. So rook e4, b3, and now knight to d7. Black is saying, okay, now it's a time. My rook is active, my queen is in a beautiful place, putting the pressure on the d pawn. Now it's a time for black to activate the knight. After knight d7, bishop to b2, king moves, rook to d2, knight f6. Finally, knight is entering the game. With the knight on f6, d5 pawn is a main target for black knight, but also black has some ideas to jump on g4. King f1, white is trying to keep fighting for the e file, but here black played just the queen to e7, saying, no, you will not go to e2, because if you do that, your d5 pawn will be easy target. So bishop f6, last chance for white here is to trade bishop for the knight with the idea to trade the rooks, but after this check, and actually more important, second check, queen d4, black is transposing this endgame to the much better rook endgame that after a couple of moves, because after a couple of moves d5 is definitely going down, rook e6, rook d5, but here white had this one chance to push the pawn to a5, at least to make this pawn push on the queen side a bit more difficult for black, but instead of that, here rook h6 happened and king g8. And after a couple of moves, b5, I will say from here, this is pretty easy winning position for a player like Wojtaszek. So he just needs to push the pawns forward again, just using the rook a little bit to protect the pawn. Here, rook e6, king f7. Again, how do you win this type of the rook endgames? Activating not only the rook, but also activating the king. So rook e6, rook to d4, always this kind of a checks, and now king g6, black king is entering, king h5, king g4, nothing else except this, check, this, b4. rook d7, check, and after the h6, king h5, king g4, the position is easily winning. I like the move rook d1 also here. Why? Because rook e1 is the one threat, but also black is ready to play rook b5 to get the b3 pawn as well. So rook e6, king h5, rook king e2, rook b1, and after rook d6, rook to b3, rook d5, king g4, white resigned. Why? Because all of these pawns will be lost pretty quickly. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this very, let's say, complex middle game position. As you can see here, with the first trade, bishop f2, black played like a brilliant first move with the bishop f2. Why? Because on that way, he got the full control over the center with a couple of trades, first bishop for the knight. Then after f4, second bishop entered the game with bishop f5. In that moment, when this mighty light bishop of white disappeared, d5 was a main target that black attacked. Because of that d5 target, white couldn't fight for a file. On that side, black activated the rook, threw it over the e file, and then black decided to play a very nice rook endgame that's much better for him. And over the time, he just pushed his queen side pawns. So I hope you enjoyed. This was let's say a little bit longer recap, but I hope you will, again, you will use this knowledge in your games. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.